So we will go ahead and get started. Did everyone get a chance to take a look at an email from the city manager that came through early this afternoon? Didn't. It's okay, but go ahead and see if we can take a look at it now. Blow it up because it's relevant. It's relevant for tonight's work. I don't believe Councilmember Real is going to be able to join us tonight. And I don't know if Schuster is with us either.
Mayor Schuster did write me this morning and let me know that he was not going to be able to attend tonight.
So we've got both council members Schuster and Gabriel unable to join us this evening. I do see we've got folks here in the main room, all as participants. So, clerk.
Mayor, tonight, just as FYI, we are in meeting format to allow us to do the breakout rooms.
Right.
So when you come to that portion, Mayor, if you want to break into the breakout rooms, we would need to recess from the work session, and then we'd go ahead and break out and then come back and reconvene the meeting.
Right. I think it's planned for us to do that. So I don't know that we wouldn't do that. I see we've got a couple of different sections here. And we're going to go ahead and start with the goals and objectives. So we'll go ahead and officially start our work session for this evening. And we'll start with the first item on our agenda for the work session, which is the sort of modified format for a council retreat. And I don't know where else to go from here because that's all I have on my under that agenda heading.
So Mayor,
yeah,
I've got my agenda.
I guess that's the notice that is confusing me, Vice Mayor. Just right now as you're bringing that up to me and I'm looking at that and I'm seeing that's the notice. I'm seeing actually under item 3 we have the agenda items. So I was a little bit confused there. City Clerk, is that what you were going to point out to me just now?
Yes, Mayor, that in the public comment period.
Right. I'm a little bit thrown off because we typically don't have a notice for a work session as the first item there. So bear with me.
Yeah, we just did that this time since this was an additional work session, Mayor.
Yep. And see what happens, a little bit of change, it's chaos. You can't handle it. I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for it to load up now. Vice Mayor, is that what you were going to tell me also? Is that I was confused and that to just go to item number 3? Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Actually, Mayor, item number 2, which is public comments on non-agenda items.
Right. Get my page to load. Okay, let's try that now. See if there are public comments on non-agenda items. Saying none. Now we'll get 3 for the work session. think we're going to turn it over to the city. So it looks like. We'll give it just a minute.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you in my office.
Yeah, it's all right. It's probably because I need to turn up my microphone. Yeah, we're at item number 3 now, which I think we need to, according once again to the agenda, is ready to be turned over to the city manager for the introduction of this portion of the work session, I believe. It's the setting goals and objectives.
Hello, Council. Good evening. As indicated in the cover sheet for you tonight, we thought where we could begin is in breakout sessions with 3 separate rooms. Let you all brainstorm toward goal setting for calendar year 2022. I guess I should offer first, I know that you took in a lot of information last night. So first, if you have any questions following up from last night or anything you'd like to ask myself or other members of staff as might be here tonight, please let us know. And then I guess if it's your pleasure, we can head to the breakout rooms to do some visioning and thinking about the upcoming year.
Council, what do you think? I've got some hands up, so okay. Let's go to Councilmember Harrington and then Vice Mayor Pierce. Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and not to prolong this portion, I'm just wondering if the city manager could give me a little bit of clarity under letter A, milestone what will be 3, and it's that last part, the assess development of city-owned land in the Turner Tract for housing. If that were the way that the goal were written, what would that mean to your office? Well, I guess how would you proceed with that?
That's a great question. I'm going to allow the Assistant City Manager to jump on in here. He and I have talked about this a little bit, and I certainly have some ideas of my own. But I think I would preface it by saying largely we'll be in an investigative phase, understanding where Bill Nye is going to be headed, and then doing some early research and what would I say, proposal building to come back to the council and discuss with you all. Todd, I know you've had conversations with the planning staff and other members of staff. Is there anything more you'd like to add there?
Muted, unmuted. Actually, I think you hit it on the head. I think what we were hoping to gain is council's goal to get moving forward on some kind of a plan. And what it may entail is a work session where we propose multiple different options and then see where council lands in a work session. And then we'll bring stuff back to you based off that work session, if that sounds fair.
So that would sort of be the general policy direction. And then like we do with many things, we'd have a work session to assess and discuss specific options. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you both, and thanks for.
Yeah, are you good? Okay, Vice Mayor Pierce, thanks for waiting.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, and I don't want to throw a wrench into anything, but the need for the breakout sessions. We're 2 council members down. That leaves 7 of us. And maybe we could just call on people as we go through the list, suggesting, this doesn't work for me, this works for me, I'm really supportive of this, or some sort of way to do that. I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to throw a wrench in the game, but we're down a few folks, so 7 doesn't divide by 3, or divide very well. So I think it's a prime number, right? Anyway.
I like it when a council member says, I don't want to throw a wrench into things, and then turns the toolbox upside down. But our staff is pretty good at thinking on their feet. I don't really have strong feelings about this, but I see Councilmember O'Doherty has a thought.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because I have FOMO, but I will promise you that if I promise to not talk too much, I would kind of like to go over the stuff together because I mean, we have to come back to it together anyway, and I think it's pretty well fleshed out, and we just need to, like, I would rearrange some things with the environmental stewardship, that kind of stuff. But anyway, I'd be happy to stay together, but then I get FOMO, fear of missing.
Councilmember Cumby.
I think I would be happy to stay together as well. I think 7's pretty manageable.
Yeah. Individual council members would say that. Staff, what do you think? Do you want to just do this as a big group? Okay, let's do it. Council members, let's do the following then, since that's the choice that we've made. Let's make sure that we weigh in on the topics, right? And then try to keep track like we would during a meeting. Let's let everybody, if they want to, speak once before we speak a second time, just to keep this efficient, and we'll move through it a little bit more meeting-esque. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. All right. City Manager, we've changed your plans. All right, let's go ahead.
Absolutely no concern, Mayor. We were just trying to give you some options, so absolutely fine if you want to go a different route, particularly with only a prime number of folks present. So we went through these last night, and what I told you is that where we had goals from 21 that sort of naturally carry forward into the upcoming year, or where maybe they should, if you choose, then I've went ahead and revised them accordingly. A good example would be in number A, milestone 1. We were looking at the Thrive Economic Development Plan and starting into the implementation phase in 21. We'll continue doing that in 22. And so I've rephrased that to be reflective and give you a head start should you like to modify the language there. I've done that as well in this section in milestone 2. Milestone 3 from 21 was completed, so I've stricken through it to give you, again, a running start. Milestone 3, we've recommended language for your consideration. It is not necessarily new, but the Planning Office did, in the section after where it says, but not limited to, capture what you heard last night, presented to you as green and yellow next steps from the presentation by our new planner and our planning manager. And those things would be taking a look in 22 at decreasing minimum lot widths, lot sizes, and setback requirements, and allowing potentially for accessible dwelling units in single-family zoning districts. And lastly, eliminating the garage requirements in single-family zones as well. And then we've touched on the notion of starting to investigate or assess development of city-owned land in the Turner Tract for housing. We would do that in an investigatory manner in the upcoming year with dialogue with you all about how that moves forward, and do that in conjunction with the construction of Bill 9. So in red is the suggested sort of new milestone 3. Milestone 4 in red also is suggested new, and again, I gave you language as a running start. Whether you identify this as a goal or not, well, I guess I shouldn't say that, because technically y'all could decide you don't want to renew the 6th penny tax. Oh, actually, I'm in the wrong section. This is renewal and redevelopment of our North 4th Street properties. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of ourselves here. That is something that we have laid the groundwork for 2, 3, and 4 years ago, and would be ready to move forward on in 22 if you'd like. So there's a kind of overview of our holistic economic development section. As you know, you can add, delete, add to, bring up completely new topics in this area as well. This is your visioning session for the upcoming year.
Thank you. So the little recap from the city manager, good. Hopefully it jogged memories from the night, last night. So anybody want to kick this discussion off in terms of how they feel about language presented, existing language and modifications? Vice Mayor Pierce, and then guys, put the hands up and we'll go in order. Okay.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get us started. I like all the changes in Section A. Very, very supportive of them. I think my only thought regarding Section A is I think this might be a spot to also emphasize some of our blight issues that maybe we won't get to right away in terms of, because not necessarily part of 4th Street, and it's not necessarily part of Bill Nye or the code considerations, but there might be some things we could do to kind of clean up some of the other issues when we saw that map with the dots on it. And maybe that piece is further down in this sheet. I don't know, but I certainly would like to see it somewhere if I could just get that out there. And the 5th milestone, my other comment is I've had a few discussions and a couple thoughts related to the 5th cent general purpose tax, and I'm wondering if we couldn't move that particular piece and form a committee like we did with the intergovernmental, only not necessarily, it would just be internal as opposed to working with the county, but kind of move that to lower to the very last section. But it doesn't need to be, because I feel like we need to potentially talk about and form a committee or something, a group of us council members regarding the 5th cent. So that's all I have in there. And I'm going to scroll down to see if some of that blight cleanup stuff isn't listed someplace else. But that's it for me on this section. Thank you.
Great, Vice Mayor. Really good. City Manager, can we answer that question for the Vice Mayor? Is that URA type material? Is that in another subsection that we're going to get to?
Mayor, if you all are referring to, and maybe Nancy can put up from the report last night, the map of the problem properties where we have nuisance or blighted sort of properties that we would consider derelict. Is that what you're referring to? And if the question is yes, or if the answer is yes to that question, there is nothing in this Excel recommended goal sheet that addresses that. So we would need to create that from scratch.
What I was wondering was whether or not the Vice Mayor was actually referencing the idea of the Urban Renewal Agency policy direction. And if that was a suggestion that's elsewhere, if that's what we would need to create from scratch. Vice Mayor, am I wrong?
Mayor.
Sorry, City Manager, let's just make sure we're on the same.
Kind of wrong, because I think the URA issue is more related to perhaps 4th Street or that issue in general, the North 4th, our project there. But I'm thinking some of the blight, I don't know what other term to use, could be addressed on some of, like some of our 3rd Street concerns.
So Vice Mayor, my understanding was that URA discussion it enveloped all of those types of concerns. And that would be one of the reasons that the city might want to explore that as a policy option, because it might assist us with the North 4th Street redevelopment, but it would also be a tool that the city would at least have available for some of these other properties, derelict or neglected properties. But let's check back with the city manager and see where we're at.
Mayor and Vice Mayor, I think you're both right. I think that the North 4th Street properties that the city owns potentially combined with surrounding areas. I don't know. We'll get there when we get there. But that could be maybe a really best first location for use of an urban renewal agency. But I think the mayor is correct as well, stemming from that urban renewal agency could also in time tackle other areas where we have properties that need to be renewed.
So is that something that is action on a URA? And I know we spent some time talking about this last night. Is that something that would need to be adopted as a new goal? And I think the answer to that is yes. And do we have any draft language for that? from staff, or do we need to come up with that as part of our process this evening?
So Mayor,
in terms of
I
adoption
had,
as a goal.
right. Mayor, I had not been specific to the use of a URA in this language I gave you, the running start language, but I did envision that milestone A5. I think it's very likely that that would be the recommendation of staff for renewing the 4th Street area. Sorry, I misspoke. It's milestone 4, 4th Street, milestone 4. It's 90% sure that the city would come back, or the city staff would come back recommending to you an urban renewal area or agency for milestone A4.
Vice Mayor, the reason I'm spending so much time on this is because I want to make sure that we're really accurate in making sure that we get these things in the goals the way we want them to be. So are you feeling like at least the first question that you asked has been addressed?
Yes and no, because I still think we could do some work on some of these properties prior to a URA and just have conversations with some of these owners and potentially offer them to help plant a tree. I don't know. I mean, something to help beautify, clean up. Is it abandoned? Is it not? You know, make some determination on some of these places. So we have better information.
Yeah. So I have an idea about some goal language for that I think addresses all of those things. But I want you also to get a chance to get to your other question. I'm going to give everybody the same kind of time and dig in on this because again, I want everybody to feel like they're getting the goal language into what they want. Your second issue was perhaps forming a subcommittee either with or without county partners on the 5th penny renewal. And do you want that in a goal?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I wasn't sure if that question was for me.
Oh no, that's for the Vice Mayor.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Anyway, it's under milestone 5, A5, which is a fine location, but I'm just wondering if we couldn't move it to our last section, E4, and just form a committee. Obviously we don't, because it's a city issue, so it would just be an internal council member committee for E4, if that makes sense.
So move milestone number 5 from this section to the E4 section, not and perhaps just add to it to form a committee to work on that task. Does that
Absolutely.
sound right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm supportive of that. I'm supportive of that idea too, Vice Mayor. Staff, does that make sense? Does that seem to flow? Yeah, I see council members nodding along here. Do you have any objections, Janine, or concerns about moving it to that section? I don't imagine you would. Does that make sense?
Mayor, no, I don't. But I should clarify, just to make sure that we all understand, the city will have to partner with the county and Rock River in order to place this on the ballot. So to some degree, it really is an intergovernmental issue. Yeah.
Then why don't we kick it to that committee? What do you think, Vice Mayor?
That certainly works for me. Or one of the thoughts I had today was maybe pulling one member off of each of the 3 other committees to form a 4th. That way we'd be 2, 2, 2, and 2, or something, or with 3 on 1 as opposed to doing double duty, if that makes sense.
Yeah, why don't we come back to this and let's put a thought into how we might form that committee, Vice Mayor. Maybe if you had some notes or want to spend a little time coming up with how you want the language of that idea to look. But I'm supportive of it. It makes sense, and I'm going to do the same thing with the other goal. I think what we can do there is have some language that says focus on under that economic development section. We can include the outreach efforts under existing city policy, and then also put in a goal to adopt the URA. I think those things can be done in the same goal section and pursue the same ends and do both of those things. You know, I don't think they're mutually exclusive at all. You're muted, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I'll go last next time. So thank you for that.
No, this is good, and I think council members are good with it. However, I have somewhat forgotten who is next in line. I think it's Councilmember Schmeckel. I'm going to say it's Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mayor. So in general, I really like these goals as well, but I would like to add something for consideration on milestone 3. I did just send some language out for the sake of making it easier on our clerk here, but something where we can help accelerate and incentivize the construction of some large-scale workforce housing here in Laramie. Seeing if we can find a way to find efficiencies and economy of scale, let alone find ways of speeding up processes, helping define what we might do as a council to make these projects go through smoother and more consistently. But also seeing if maybe the conditions that we're in these days with a large number of communities surrounding us, causing a lot of demand for this, if we can make ourselves more attractive for these developers to come in, make it easier for them to look at things like this. So the language I'm proposing is consider and implement methods for accelerating and incentivizing construction of workforce-oriented housing.
Yeah. Okay. Is there support? We know we're in a work session, we're not really voting, but is there general support for the inclusion of this language in that goal section from everybody? Yeah? Good. Any questions from staff about what Councilmember Schmeckel's getting at here? I think it's pretty clear. Yeah, okay, everybody's all right. Seems to fit pretty well. Okay, Councilmember Cumby, I see you have a question for this topic. Yeah,
I do, Mr. Mayor. Fred, I'm just wondering if you could expand or define what you mean by workforce housing.
So trying to make it affordable without using the word affordable and putting the low income thoughts to that. I mean, I'm all in favor of income that's easily accessible for workers who are just starting out. Say we're getting some students that are graduating from Laramie High or graduating from UW that are just starting out their careers that want a nicer place to live than the apartment they've been renting for college, something like that, where they can actually build up and afford it, as well as small families as they start to grow here. So that it's a wide variety of housing that is not focusing on building one house at a time. Maybe it's building multiple houses at a time. I'll go down nostalgia lane here and risk sounding like I'm one of the Pepperidge Farm guys in a rocking chair and say that when I grew up, there was a neighborhood built behind my parents' house when I was 7, and they were building an average of a house a day. And it took 8 days to build a house. And over the course of one summer, they built an entire neighborhood. And the development I'm seeing around Laramie, I'm not seeing that speed. And I would love to see that kind of effort be brought in so that we can actually address this massive shortfall of housing that we're projecting and witnessing and experiencing here in town.
Councilmember Cumby.
Yes, so then I'm wondering if what you're envisioning, and it's something that I'm envisioning, they also call it intentional communities, building neighborhoods, like you're saying that, you know, back in the 20s, then back in the 50s, the craftsman homes, that an intentional neighborhood.
My goal is to get more units open in Laramie as fast as rate as possible. I'm not envisioning this for infill projects or in neighborhoods where we might be considering a historic overlay, but maybe in specific areas across town where we know that we can sustain that development, that maybe there's an opportunity to take some existing infrastructure and use that as a means where they can make some fast progress and see some earlier profits in the process so that they can facilitate doing the project by raising less funding and getting more money up front.
I agree. And so then I think it might be advantageous to tweak that wording a little bit, whereas workforce housing is kind of a little, it doesn't say exactly what we're talking about. And, across the nation, they are building these intentional communities that are smaller lots. It kind of meets the needs that you're talking about. So I would suggest that we tweak that language so that it reflects better exactly what we're talking about. And I'm totally in favor of it. Thank you.
I would absolutely be open to edits on language for stuff that's better.
So we've got some more hands coming up. Let me know if we're on Councilmember Schmeckel's topic. Yes? Okay, good. So I'd like to go to, and this is totally fine, I'm just doing my best to keep track here. I'd like to go to Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm wondering if Councilor Schmeckel would be open to sticking with sort of the language that the council has already been utilizing in this regard, and simply referring to it as attainable housing. That there's some, we have had a lot of meetings about sort of these definitions, and I'm just wondering if maybe that might be a more simplistic way to get to what we're talking about by replacing workforce with attainable. Because I would be of the mind myself, and I hate to get too far into the weeds here, but I would hate to build, I think, sort of like socioeconomic mixed neighborhoods tend to be healthier. I think the data would bear that out. I think that's the type of neighborhood we should be building. Not necessarily, and I don't mean this as in any way that we should avoid sort of like a planned neighborhood or an intentional neighborhood. I think that's a wise idea. I think we should just also include, sort of houses at multiple income levels. And so for that reason, I think attainable might be a valuable word, but I'm open to being pushed around by the rest of council.
I'm gonna interject a little bit here, because I think what Councilmember Schmeckel is talking about with regard to this goal suggestion, and you let me know if I'm right or wrong here, is actually slightly different than what Councilmember Harrington is talking about. I think Councilmember Harrington's idea has more to do with the allowing different types of properties in different areas and in mixed neighborhoods to exist. And I think what Councilmember Schmeckel is talking about is the real need for a planned unit type development that can go up quickly to take place. And I'm hearing two different things there. And I also want to suggest that I think that ties into the staff suggestions about the use of city-owned property, like the Turner Tract, which is an existing language here, where, and I know council, we've talked about this, where if we could find a development partner to come in and say, we can develop this kind of housing in this area if we can work together to do it. Councilmember Schmeckel, am I on the right track or am I not?
Mayor, I think that the problem is large enough that as long as we're getting more front doors that can be opened, I think we're winning. And I'm willing to take whatever viewpoint it's going to be on that. I was envisioning, first homes, not the upscale retirement home or pre-retirement home that many are under development here in Laramie as is. I'm not looking for the $500,000 condo. I'm looking for more front doors as my primary goal.
And what I'm wondering is if we get a development partner to come in, Councilmember Harrington, what I'm concerned about is they're going to say, well, we want to build, kind of within these parameters. We're not going to build the 750 and the 500 and the 200s in a mixed configuration, but perhaps we can create that as a priority and say that's what we want to see. Is that getting to some of what you're speaking to?
Mr. Mayor, I guess what I'm getting at more so than that is maybe not in what I'm hearing in this, I guess, just to rewind a little bit, is the city incentivizing it and really like simplifying the process of building more houses. That's the part that I read in this, not as much the planned unit part. I mean, I think that came from Councillor Smeckel's story. I think I picked that part up from there. But not to split hairs on the the language he sent out. I heard incentivize. So in my head, the switch that flipped was sort of like the scale is going to be way off on this example, but early pandemic, the city decided we're going to figure out how to make outdoor dining an option in downtown. And it had been problematic, obviously, for years. We just took we'll say yes and figure out how to get their approach to that. And what I read what I heard in what Councillor Smeckel was saying was, sort of applying that. Again, the scale is way off, but in using that sort of a mindset from the city towards housing, the planned development might be a perfect mechanism for it. I just want to make sure we aren't getting in a spot where we are putting one socioeconomic group, regardless of what level that is at, as an island, I guess. I don't want us to be sort of unintentionally segregating our community for in really any way. I'm not asking for us to build, a $750,000 house next to an apartment building. That's not my point necessarily. I'm just saying maybe we shouldn't. I would be wary of the city investing our money in a development that segregated our community. And I don't want to segregate is probably the worst word to use there. That this sort of stratifies our community in any way and kind of creates these little islands that could be viewed as a project, sort of an area. So that probably made everything more confusing, and my point not any easier to digest, but that's what's in my brain right now. So thanks, Mr. Mayor.
No, it really wasn't that. It really wasn't that bad. I'm going to go back to Councilmember Schmeckel, and I'm going to ask folks to keep their hands in the air right now. If we're talking about Councilmember Schmeckel's proposal, then I'll try to get back to first points that council members want to make on this issue. Councilmember Schmeckel.
I will say that I appreciate Councilmember Harrington's comments there, and I think the conversation is large enough that we need to have that perhaps we should include both words and be just broader in our approach to this.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the Assistant City Manager in a second, but I'm going to give Councilmember Cumby her moment here on this. Oh, and I see I've got another councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that some of the zoning changes that we have made and are considering offer great incentive for more mixed neighborhoods. And in the development of these intentional communities, they are fourplex, duplex, and single home. I think if the city were going to invest, we need to invest in more affordable, accessible housing and not $500,000, $750,000 houses, but rather houses that are obtainable by the majority of our workforce. So that's my comment. Thank you.
You bet, Councilmember Cumby. Something that's really hitting home for me right now, council members, is we cannot get too detailed and granular with these goals. We've got to keep these goals sort of top line and make sure they can accommodate these different concerns and considerations that people want to. If we want the goals to spell out all of our hopes and dreams and fears and anxieties, we will not be able to put them into goals. We just have to keep that in mind. So what we want to try to do is come up with those language choices that address those issues. Councilmember Somerville, do you mind if I check with Assistant City Manager Fieser on this topic, because he spoke to this area last night before we go to you? Or
Sure.
do you have?
No, I can wait. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you, Councilmember Somerville. I just know that I think he has some something to put in on this because it was one of his topics that he covered with us last night. Assistant City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. You know, there's actually, the city has a lot of reports that all of them say that we need to work on improving workforce housing. We need to work on improving mixed use development and how to incentivize that. You know, as staff brings you proposals, we're going to use all of those housing studies and reports and community builders to bring you what we feel is the best proposal. And council is going to have a chance during those processes to say we've either met or not met the intent of what we're shooting for. I'm a little bit concerned, as you said, about some granular getting down into the weeds here. To, you know, for us, you know, getting more affordable housing and workforce housing or attainable housing, however you want to phrase it, is really, it's high on our list. And it's a priority for staff, and it's going to be part of it. And I would hope that staff understands those wishes from council. I don't know that it's necessary to have it said at this point in the goals, because I'm afraid they're going to get too specific. That's the only thing that I would lay out there.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager. I share that. Council, at some point, we have to have faith that the staff has really heard the range of concerns, and I do, and I think you all do, because I agree with Councilmember Schmeckel. I agree with the policy direction he's talking about, and I don't think it's at odds with Councilmember Harrington's concerns either. I think they're all kind of under that big housing umbrella. The reason I got a little excited there is because we are talking about that use of city-owned properties where we do have a little bit of that ability to say to a potential partner, yeah, come on in and we want to work with you, but this is the kind of thing we're looking at. But I think the staff understands that. Councilmember Somerville?
Thanks, Mayor. So I have two different comments. One of them is to Councilor Schmeckel's idea, and actually a little bit to what the Vice Mayor and what was being discussed earlier with the Urban Renewal Agency. I would like to suggest that in some piece of these goals that we add a concentration on areas that we haven't focused on in terms of incentives. So to get to Councilor Schmeckel's kind of point and streamlining and incentivizing and making this a little easier, you know, we haven't looked at the TIF district. We haven't looked at a URA in depth. And I think we really need to stop spending time thinking that the development code is going to fix all of this and really dig into some other tool areas. So Mayor, I don't have a specific place I want to put that wording, but I just want to make, my thought is to make sure that we're spending time on those. And I want to be conscious of staff resources and staff time. And I'll just say overall, I'm a little concerned about the number of goals that we've laid out for staff to work on while still managing a pandemic. That's just my personal thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's well taken. You know, it's city manager, assistant city manager. It's one thing for us to say, we don't want to add any new goals, but if we add a whole bunch of new stuff under the umbrella of old goals, it's basically the same thing. So let's go to Councilmember Cumby on the economic development stuff still. Okay, Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to chime in with the Vice Mayor that I think we spent a good bit of time last night discussing some of the neglected properties in town and their impact on economic development, tourism, etc. And I think it's really important that we start somewhere. And even if it's small, I think that this is an issue that we need to work on, and that by working on some of these neglected and derelict properties, I think it will open us up to further development, to the development of tourism. And I'm looking at our map from last night, and milestone 4
Councillor Cumby, we can't hear you.
sorry, the milestone about the 4th Street development and surrounding areas, I think it should extend further onto the area that's identified on Snowy Range. I think that the conditions there are inhibiting development, and it also is a major avenue for tourists coming through, recreational spots and stuff. And I think that there are some areas in the city that maybe we could begin to look at that and begin to address this issue and not delay it another year. Thank you very much.
Certainly. Councilmember Harrington, and then I'll go to Councilmember O'Doherty. Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mayor. I was just curious from the city staff point of view if these sort of this idea of a new program to improve the sort of like aesthetic of our of these blighted properties wouldn't be encompassed in a milestone 2. I know that may have a particular meaning to like retail incentives, but it does seem, I mean, if I read it, I could also read that as like a program to improve the visual aesthetic of our retail corridors, which I think are the things that I just heard Councillor Cumby and the Vice Mayor talking about in this regard. I mean, those are the spots that I think we should prioritize. And I think it's such a big project that we really need to be, as a council, fairly specific on what we want, where we want this to be implemented. Because I think if we just say like all of Grand Avenue, all of 3rd Street, all of Snowy Range, we may not have the most impact. And I'm thinking like more discrete locations might have a bigger economic impact on the city. So I think it could be included there with no additional or changes in the language at all. But I was curious if city staff maybe thought the same or disagreed.
Let me make sure I'm looking at the right. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, City Manager, please.
Through you, Mayor, Councillor Harrington. So I highlighted these in green. I just thought it'd be easier. I highlighted these periods, one in green, and that gets to, I think, what Councillor Harrington was touching on, milestone 2. And I'm typing, as you see. Nancy gave me the ability to share screen, so I'm typing sort of in real time to capture your language and thoughts. And I may do it well, and I may do it poorly, so please tell me to add and edit where you'd like. To your question, Councillor Harrington, on milestone 2, I think you're right. When we wrote this goal in 21, we envisioned a program where we would work with retail ready or nearly retail ready properties, but really properties that already existed, to make them more desirable for retailers to move into the city of Laramie. And that was a recommendation from our retail leakage and retail opportunity analysis study. So yes, this was pretty specific to already existing properties and how we made them more interesting to new retailers. If you look at the sort of peachy at the bottom, this is where I was trying to capture some of what you guys were just talking about, starting with the mayor. Let me talk to you a little bit about an urban renewal authority or agency. I tend to use those terms interchangeably. So when we looked at North 4th Street, our own properties there, we understood that an urban renewal authority was a potential tool for redeveloping our property and maybe other surrounding properties near us. We also are familiar with Urban Renewal Authority as a suggestion in our economic development plan for ways to address areas of the community that are ready for redevelopment, not just at 4th Street, but elsewhere. So how this would work is once you establish an Urban Renewal Authority, then you can go in, and this gets to what you guys were talking about, you can go in and establish specific, discrete renewal districts. So maybe our first district, I think our first district that we could really look at is the one where we're a property owner as well, and that's North 4th Street. But how we would prioritize creating districts and what priority they'd have as we roll forward is certainly up to you. So the peach is where I'm trying to capture some of your discussion around that. That authority just creates a tool where we can address blighted areas, and we can renew areas that maybe are ready for redevelopment, like maybe they're at the end of their useful life and could be better redeveloped. Anyway, that's where I'm at. I think I answered the question, and help me edit as we go. And then, of course, the yellow, I'm trying to capture what you just discussed as well.
Excuse me, is there any way to increase the size of this just a little bit?
Yes, I will do that right now, Councilor Cumby. I saw you had your magnifying glass out, so it's really big on my screen, but not coming across that way to you guys.
Stretch out the C, yeah. I think you could just
that
make
better?
the C column wider.
Oh, you know what? I'll do this too, yeah. How's that? Is that so much better, everybody?
Amazing.
Okay, very good.
Why don't we go to Councilmember O'Doherty?
I think we're getting into the weeds, and we're supposed to give our staff the broad ideas, and I feel like if we start saying where exactly we want things to happen, they're going to be hard to attain, because there's going to be opportunities that come up based on the first two things that are going on. And maybe just a property owner says, look, I haven't been able to take care of this place. If you have some use for it, so we could get opportunities could come up, and we don't want to say we have to do it on this place, this place, this place. That's my opinion. So I think the way it's written now, we're good. We have direction for staff, and that we shouldn't get too specific. Thanks.
Okay, why don't we, Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mayor. I have a different, I wanted to bring something else up, so I just want to make sure everybody's good on that last one before I move on.
But still under the holistic economic development policy area. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm good with everything I heard, and I think we're ready to get to a has anybody heard any, let me just do a quick check with everybody. Councilmember Harrington, does everybody feel okay with the way we've run through these so far? Do you feel like you've had a chance to weigh in on what you think is important? All right. Councilmember Harrington, thank you for letting me do that, and I'll probably do that a couple of times just because I don't want to miss anybody. Go ahead, Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mayor. The only thing I wanted to ask was potentially, and I'm not sure it's necessary, but I would like us to adopt some variety of plan associated with the Turner Tract. The assessed development of city-owned property. I would be interested in maybe strengthening that language just a little bit so that we have, I think we could see more development associated with our development if we had a solid plan. And so I guess I would just, the things I heard when I asked about this point earlier from the assistant city manager and city manager, were the things I was hoping for. So I'm not sure a change is needed, but I think the end goal for me would have a plan adopted by the council for what our intention is with that land. I think that could be meaningful for others that may be trying to develop along future Bill Nye, or in sort of the surrounding areas to know what the city has in mind with, because we own so much of that land. I think us having a public plan would be helpful.
And indeed, in the past, we have, Councilmember Harrington. But I want to, I think this is a little bit of a callback to Councilmember Schmeckel's point, or at least the way I interpreted it, and where I think I agree, and where I also agree with you, Councilmember Harrington. What I'd like to see is a plan laid out that said what we'd like to see is, I'm riffing here a little bit, but you know, entry price point housing developed in large volume here in the Turner Tract. Developers, what do you got? Because that's what our plan for this, that's what our city plan for this area says. City manager, can you talk to us about the old Turner Tract plan? And the reason you guys are hearing me stop and pause is I keep getting this, my internet connection is unstable thing, and I don't want to keep going while you can't hear me. City manager, do you want to talk to us a little bit about Turner Tract plan stuff?
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor. And Councilor Harrington, of course, we city staff, we love planning and plans. So you won't be surprised to know that we have had 2 plans for the Turner Tract over the years. I think the first one in 2001, and then we updated the plan in 2013 after selling property there to the Albany County School District and knowing that they were going to build the recreation center on that, or excuse me, the Laramie High School on the Turner Tract near the recreation center. So we updated the plan to take into account that huge change, which would be our only high school being there. This is a screenshot of the plan. It's on our website. This is sort of generally what it looks like right now. So you'll see if we go back to the goals, or when we go back to the goal worksheet, I said review the Turner Tract plan. This may be suitable. And we may already have a plan forward for what you guys want, but it might not, and it has been since 2013, so we should probably take a look at it, bring it back to you guys, make sure it's still the vision that we have, and we could always update the plan if we need to, but we did think that we had a plan that was a good 20, 30-year vision. So if you're comfortable with the way I've written that language, something to the effect of here, that we would review the Turner Tract plan and assess development. And so we'll bring that back, refresh everybody's memory in more detail, decide if we need to take another look at the plan or if it's good to go, and then move forward. Does that sound okay? Okay.
It really does, City Manager. Can I make one suggestion about that goal, a language tweak? And I'd like to, just council members, the head bob or chime in or whatever. Could we add into that about assessment with the Turner Tract plan, and maybe add words to the effect of with a focus on housing development or entry level housing development, whatever the preferred real estate term is for affordable housing, and just add that piece to it with a focus on housing development. Do people feel okay with that? Is that controversial? City manager, do you feel okay about that? Okay. Okay. All right.
Todd, are you?
Probably one of the. I'm always checking to see if you guys are feeling as enthusiastic as I am about these little suggestions. But if you think that works okay and you can live with it, let's put that in there. Because I think the managers, our hopes and dreams are that Turner Tract does hold some promise for us with housing development. So it seems natural to kind of put that emphasis on it. That's all. Okay.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Council, and that's precisely what the Assistant City Manager was saying. Wow, like we own that land, we have the ability to develop like a variety of housing products there, from entry level to workforce to more mid-level. So a lot of opportunity.
Thank you very much. And I would like to make a statement about that history there, going back to 2013, and the Vice Mayor will recall this too. Yes, that was a policy choice that we made, but in some very real ways, after the school facility siting commission identified that area as best for the location of the new high school, I don't think it's inaccurate for us to say that we felt somewhat like we had to kind of go along to get along with that. Because of course that was a state authority saying, we really feel like this is the best place to put the high school. Vice Mayor, does that recollection seem accurate to you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, and I think we also talked about the potential need for another fire station. You know, we reserved some really interesting infrastructure type related, city service type related amenities. So I do think that's there.
Thank you. Just kind of wanted to check a little bit with memory on that, because that was kind of the way I felt that discussion went. And we of course had some concerns because we said, once the high school comes in, that begins to shape some of what can and can't be done there in the Turner Tract. And we knew that was going to kind of shape the destiny of that area that had once been a little more open to a variety of things, that sort of began to tailor it a little bit. And I just think that's worth revisiting just for a moment. Okay, Councilmember Harrington, do you feel pretty good about Turner Tract planning? All right. Other goal change, language suggestions here? Okay. Are we ready to maybe move on to the next section? Everybody feels like they've been able to weigh in with concerns and things like that? All right, good. Thank you. City Manager, you want to talk to us about environmental stewardship goals?
So thank you, Mayor and Council. You had 4 goals here last year. This goal in yellow is ready to be removed as long as you're okay with that. Staff, as you know, will continue to monitor the river issues in the background and work to improve our stormwater runoff into the river. But we are recommending item number 1 and item number now 2 would move forward. You've already adopted these by resolution back in 2020. So whether you include them here on this goal sheet or not, they will move forward. And then item 3, also we recommended for continuing forward, assuming that that's a multi-year effort.
Councilmember O'Doherty.
I was thinking that milestone 1, I mean, it's kind of a part of milestone 3. And so I would like to combine that into something like consider further waste and litter reduction opportunities through recycling. Well, I don't know. Do you see what I mean? That really we want to not have plastic bags blowing around Laramie. We want to reduce the amount of waste going into our landfill. So, so I would like to combine that into one general thing. And I have to say it also affects the river because we get a lot of those plastic bags that just cover the benthos, my favorite part of rivers where the little critters are living. And so, so maybe we make this more general, because our staff is already working on recycling. They're always finding more opportunities. Anyway, do other people see it as kind of the same thing? So, consider.
Go ahead and read it and see if you like, Councilmember O'Doherty.
Okay, it says consider public policies for recycling and litter reduction, including reduction of retail use plastic bags, as set forth in Resolution 2020-07, and exploring value-added recycling partnership opportunities. I think that's fine the way it is, and Do you mind if do you want to talk about that one? Because I also think that milestone 3, which is now 2, the continue, I think we ought to say continue efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as set forth in resolution 2020 dash. So that was 14, right? And because we want to do it through renewable energy and efficiencies, but also we need to consider things that take carbon dioxide out of the air, like planting. So, you know, just ways for carbon capture. But it's covered in that resolution, so we don't have to get too specific here. Thank you.
Maybe you guys can help me out. Is greenhouse one word or is it 2?
I think it's 2.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can,
1 or 2? Do we take a poll? 1 finger or 2
I
fingers?
usually do it as 1, but
1, okay.
we could refer to the document, but
Right.
but it includes things like through efficiencies, renewable energy, and carbon capture. It would be nice, I think, to mention a couple of those things in there.
So something like continue efforts to reduce greenhouse, one word, gas emissions as set forth in resolution 2020-14, utilizing carbon capture, renewable energy, and what was the last one?
Increased efficiency.
Okay.
And then
Mayor.
we wouldn't need the last one. It's included in number 1.
Help me with this last few words here. Utilizing carbon capture, renewable energy, and greenhouse.
No, and energy efficiencies.
Oh, thank you.
Todd, you were saying?
Yeah, Mayor, for Janine, I think it might be easier if you just reference resolution 2021-12 and 2020-14, because 2021-12 is renewable energy installations and efficiencies, and 2020-14 is the reduction of carbon emissions and greenhouse gases. So,
Thanks, Todd.
So then maybe what we're telling Janine is that it's okay to strike the examples because we're referencing a document that has the examples. Yeah. I'm happy with it. I like it just as it is with what Todd just put in there. Janine, does that make sense? We can leave it as is, but if for further detail, please reference the resolutions. Does that make sense?
I think our staff knows about those, so.
Yep. Hopefully we're not being too wordsmith here. But the goals are important, as we know. They do kind of set forward, you know, what our policy focus is, but at the same time we don't. This is tough. Be specific, but not too specific.
So, Council, at this point, you have 2 goals in this section. I'm putting them in green because they seem like they should be in green.
I like it. Councilmember
Protecting our
O'Doherty.
water resources. Should protecting our water resources be here, or is it covered by the intergovernmental?
Let's see. Where do we reference the aquifer policies in the goals document? Is it under the environmental stewardship section? Should it be? City manager, is it referenced somewhere else in the goals document? I'm sorry, Janine, you were muted on that one.
Can you guys hear me at all?
Yes.
Okay, I lost my good audio. I'll call back in. I accidentally hung up the phone, but it is not referenced in this document.
So, council, should we put an aquifer protection piece here under environmental stewardship? I'll go to Councilmember Doherty and then Councilmember Councilmember
I
Doherty.
think it's not just the aquifer, but the our river water. So I think protecting our water resources, that would cover a lot of things, and so the aquifer protection would be under that, and anything we need to do down at the Monolith Ranch.
Okay, Councilmember Cumby.
I agree. That's what I was going to say, that we're working on a number of water projects right now, and I would like to see it more global than just the aquifer. So I agree with Councilor O'Doherty. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Pierce. Thank you, Councilmember Cumby.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. You know, if we don't put it in here, we could certainly add it to somewhere in item D. So, because we talk about, surface runoff, management, other infrastructure issues, because truly the aquifer is our water infrastructure, right? So it could be in D or here. Either place is fine with me, but I think we're fine either way.
I think I'd like to see it in both areas because it touches on two different aspects of it, but I agree with what you said. Other input on this? Okay to have it as a third goal? Okay. Thanks, Vice Mayor. Do we feel good about the 3 milestones under environmental stewardship? They're comprehensive and they're inclusive. Malia.
Yes, I just, Mayor and Council, you might want to consider the lead pipe that we have to inventory as water protection or stewardship, and not necessarily, infrastructure, because we're really doing it for EPA and trying to help with that. And it may go with that goal, like you'd have it as a sub goal in that goal. That's just a suggestion.
I think it's a good suggestion, and I see council members agreeing with it. Let's give Janine a minute to consider what kind of language we would add and where.
Mayor and Council, I did include that goal down here, milestone 3 under city services.
Okay, let's get some input from Malia again on that.
Janine, I was just thinking it should go under stewardship, environmental, because it's really more environmental than the infrastructure, because we're doing this for EPA and regulations to, inform people what kind of pipes they have, and also might have to have mitigation of it. So I thought it would go with the water one that they just did, and we could make it in the same goal or have a sub goal, like you have little comments on a goal, we could do that and kind of incorporate both the water one that they just talked about with that together.
Gotcha. Yeah, Council, I'm fine with whichever direction you'd like to go. It makes sense to me what Malia's saying.
It makes sense to me also. So we'll shift it up and tag it into that one. Vice Mayor, I see you still got your hand up, but I don't know if that's on purpose.
No, it's not on purpose. I don't even have, sorry.
Oh no, don't worry about it. I was just letting you know. But I didn't want to move on if you had. All right. Okay, so that made sense to us to put that into the environmental stewardship piece. And we're still tacking it in as a goal, and it maybe just shortens up that city services one. Everybody okay? Are we good with environmental stewardship?
Right.
Councilmember,
Just getting the part in there about protecting our water sources, continue. I mean, the city's gonna do that anyway, right? Because that's, that's what Darren's job is, but of our water sources, the aquifer and the river.
oh, I thought we had, okay, there we go. So, I think Janine's going to consolidate that into 3 milestones. Councilmember Adorty.
So maybe the way to consolidate number 2 and the lead and copper is to say continued protection of water at the source and, you know, the water sources and initiate the lead and copper. I don't know. I think they can go together, but we probably don't have to edit together, do we? As long as Janine knows what we're going for here.
I think that's right, and I think Janine's making notes as we go along, so we don't actually have to wait for her to hammer it all out. As long as she's comfortable with that, we're not going too fast.
Erin, am I getting closer? Sorry, I'm trying to.
Yeah, well, since Malia was saying that we should have initiate copper, lead and copper, maybe as a subset of protecting city water, and then like 1 could be the natural sources, and then 2 could be initiate the lead and copper.
Gotcha. Okay.
That captures it.
Getting closer.
I think that captures it, and we can count on our city manager to cross T's and dot I's if they need to. The editing.
Yeah, I agree. And Janine, that's just an effort so that you don't have to get it all, you know, just perfect. I mean, as long as we've got the general, then we can move on. Okay, last call for additions to environmental stewardship milestones. Which we've made a tremendous amount of progress on, thanks to the efforts of the staff. Okay. So, city services to residents.
Mayor, in this section, 1 and 2 would continue with some slight modification in the language to be more accurate in milestone 2 as to what we'll do in 22, or what we'd like to do. Milestone 3 and 4 would go away, and milestone 4 is one suggested by staff as just something that we will need to do, renew the lease of the ranch in 22, and that will have a lot of policy implications and a pretty large amount of work as well for staff and council. So that's why we suggested it.
Makes sense. Input on the milestones under maintain and improve city services to residents. Seeing some thumbs up. Vice Mayor, thumbs up from you. Addresses some of those concerns you've mentioned regarding staffing and compensation issues. Okay. I'm good with it as well. Janine, I'm sensing that council feels pretty comfortable with this as it is, as you presented it. Oh, we've lost your sound again. I'm sorry.
Mayor, give me 1 second to enter a number in the phone.
No problem.
Okay, I give up trying to connect by phone. It doesn't want to let me do that. So it sounds like we're good to go by removing these and leaving these 3 milestones.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to the next section. This is maintaining and improving municipal infrastructure. Milestone 1 recommended some language that would update that for 22. And then milestone 2, again, editing that a little bit to be more precise in the language in terms of surface water runoff, diversion, and management versus that more generic term of stormwater. Really, that's the big change there. Milestone 3 would go away. Milestone would be the new 3, would continue if you would like to, as would milestone 4. We'll be wrapping up the majority of those projects this year, and then milestone 6 goes away. So those are your staff recommendations in this section.
Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, I'm not entirely sure where this would go, but I'd like to put some language in there about making it a goal of the City Council to, I don't know if it's staff the grants, people that we need appropriately to go after money for essentially street and other infrastructure from the federal dollars that have come down. I don't know if that makes sense. That was terribly worded. But really, I really don't want to lose that chance to get funds into the street system. And the second piece of that comment is putting in there a bulletin that says special consideration of funding available through the infrastructure package to complete infrastructure in West Laramie and other unpaved areas of the city.
Okay, Andy, how'd I do?
Yeah, pretty good. That looks good. I don't want to necessarily not go after funding for the unpaved seconds, like roads on 2nd Street and some, there's a few other sections that are not in West Laramie that are unpaved. So
Yeah, that's
whatever that wording would be. And kind of my thought was if we needed, extra contract work to try to pull down some of that money as they're promulgating those rules, or from the state, when the state receives those piles, it would seem to be a good investment if it will allow us to complete more infrastructure street work.
Absolutely. As far as, I think I've done typing. Council, as far as the staffing issues go, we are contracting. In fact, the work that we just did, Todd's office did to secure funding for your Greenbelt was contract grant writing. So yes, we have resources to write grants, assuming that we have to write grants for the federal infrastructure monies and they don't pass through to us.
Right.
And I will tell you this too, some of the firms even in our area are becoming very savvy and understanding that there's going to be a need by many governmental entities, just us being one of them, for more bandwidth in order to not only access the federal funds, but then maybe manage those projects. That would be pretty typical, like with what the city did with the ARA funding back during the Obama administration. We actually had so much project work going on, we not only had to contract some grant help, but more importantly, we had to contract for project managers to help us get the money spent according to the deadline. So we've got some enterprising firms around us that are already gearing up to maybe be resources for us in that way.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councilmember Somerville on her point there, but I'm curious if we should consider expanding it to include sidewalks throughout Laramie in the name of elder access and implementing ADA accessibility measures as well as needed.
So maybe keep the unpaved roadways because that addresses West Laramie and everywhere else, but then also add some language about
the places where the kids are using the sidewalks as bike ramps, if there's a way to smooth that out and make it less of a hazard.
Yeah. Just trying to think about, looks like, yeah. Okay. It's up from Councilor Somerville. Now it's an approval all the way around. The city manager minute to that. Gene, I hope this isn't it. Excruciating way to do this, but it does seem actually to be, it is seeming relatively efficient. And we're doing pretty good, folks. It's 7:27 and we're moving through the goals actually at a pretty good clip. Although it may not seem that way, we really are. Yeah, I think that's good. All right, other suggestions or inputs for maintain and improve municipal infrastructure? Seems like we're good.
So Mayor, would you like to move to the next section?
I'm going to check with the council because it looks like we've got a hand raised for some input. Although we're not at a public comment period, I don't know that it's a problem. Council, would you like to take some public input? Okay. Why don't we give Judy an opportunity to speak?
Thank you very much, Mayor and Janine and all of the city council people. How about adding, because I now fit into this category, about improving the sidewalks for access for disabled and elderly persons? Is that appropriate or not necessary? I leave that up to you. It's just a suggestion.
I think it's fine. Councilmember O'Doherty?
I think if we called it accessibility, that covers, you know, to improve accessibility, that because we want to to be accessible to everybody, right?
Okay. Yep, perfect.
Thanks, Judy.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you.
Not a problem. Great suggestion. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, good. Thanks, Janine. That's exactly it. Okay. Other inputs for that item before we move on? Okay. So I think that gets us to intergovernmental collaboration.
Okay, so council, let me get this formatted a little bit better for you to look at it. As you know, this is just continuing the 3 intergovernmental committees that you already had. That would be these sections. Earlier, you had conversation about potentially creating a 4th committee that would look at the renewal of the 5th cent general purpose tax. So I did move that down here.
Okay. Council, I'd like to run one by you, but I'm going to go to the vice mayor. Who's going to handle it.
Mayor, if you want to go, that's fine.
It's quick. Given some input we've had recently, I wonder if we might add, and I don't know where it would go, probably under milestone 3, if we might put something in here about support the Laramie County Community College, Albany County campus efforts for long-term viability, something along those nature. Help me, anyone with language, but I wonder if we might put something. I don't know if it needs to be a separate milestone or if it would go into milestone 3, but something there. Does that seem acceptable? Does that make sense? I think it fits under the intergovernmental collaboration, and they've come to us. And
Mayor, I agree.
Yeah.
I think we can certainly add that to our work in milestone 3. I think that's fine.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I'm one of the, yeah.
Sorry, Vice Mayor, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I think that, not that I can speak for Councilor Schuster and Somerville, but I think that'd be okay.
I've got a thumbs up from Councilor Somerville. Councilmember Cummey, did you have some input on that one? Just general agreement? Okay, I appreciate that. Council, everybody okay with that? Councilmember O'Doherty?
I just have a point of information. I think Alt-Enter lets you break a line within an Excel cell so you don't have to keep making spaces.
Janine,
So
giving a double
Alt-Enter.
thumbs up. All right.
I've been using Excel for so long, I had no idea. What is that again? Alt-Enter?
Alt-Enter at the same time. You hold down Alt, hit Enter at the space where you want to break in the line within the cell. I knew there was a way and I couldn't remember what it was.
This meeting is worth gold. Thank you.
I was just going to say, there are not many groups of people that I would really want to sit down and group edit a spreadsheet of text entries with, but I do think we all try to be as helpful as we can to each other. All right, Vice Mayor, you've got a hand up for another input item, so let's go.
Yeah, so I just want to explain a little bit more about the potential of adding milestone 4. Part of my reason for thinking of this is basically, and Councilor Gabriel is not here, but he mentioned and seemed really enthusiastic at one of our past meetings related to the 5th cent. And I thought, maybe there is something to that in terms of either having 2 council members on these committees or giving council members the option of doing double duty, right? So anyway, that's kind of where I went with that. And he was the one that really sparked that thought. And, sadly he's not here to help with that consideration. But I thought, we do have council members who are really have some past knowledge and interest in this 5th cent issue, you know, from Mayor Somerville, you know, there are, as she's got her hand raised, that might be really exceptional at this and would be willing to do double duty or just pulled off, because the 5th cent thing, I mean, we're done in November, right? And we're educational, so maybe it's kind of a divide and conquer tactic. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there, and that's why I had that thought. And the other thought I had is Milestone 1. If we could kind of potentially rename that to like sort of natural resource considerations, that way we would cover the aquifer issue, as well as, because once we get that aquifer protection plan completed, you know, I think they can consider other issues, that particular group. So anyway, that was my thought.
I support those thoughts, and I see the rest of the council does as well. Let's go ahead and see what Councilmember Somerville wants to add.
Thanks, Mayor. Just some thoughts, just from previous discussion. I like the idea on the 5th cent general purpose tax of giving the council members that are really interested in it and willing to lend a hand with education and everything, the ability to do so. But I'm going to throw out just a thought, which is there's 3 county commissioners and we have 3 committees, and the 5th tax is definitely an intergovernmental thing. So instead of creating another committee separate, asking a county commissioner to add another one to their plate, because we all know they carry like 15 committees apiece, I wondered if we could just send out an invitation to like Councilor Gabriel and any other council members. We'll slide it under the intergovernmental, because we've already talked about that a little bit, and just have a separate time bank with Commissioner Gosar instead of creating another committee. But that's just a thought. I'm not opposed to it. I just want to make it easy on the county commissioners.
Yeah, meeting efficiency and people's time and everything, that makes sense. So maybe taking that milestone 4 like the city manager is doing and just putting it under that heading. I like that.
But Mayor, with the intention of any council member that wants to join, I mean, the more the merrier, up to 4, right, in one spot to work on that would be great.
Any concerns from anyone? Okay. Any other input on the milestones for intergovernmental collaboration? Thank you both. Certainly makes sense to me. Okay.
Mayor, those are all of the sort of categories we've used and goals we've used previously. This information down here was the supplemental stuff that I sent you yesterday, so I just didn't delete it from the spreadsheet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Councilmember O'Doherty?
I just have I think there's a typo. Back way up at holistic economic development, milestone, the one that's really long, that aren't they called accessory dwelling units and not accessible dwelling units? I mean, in the presentation yesterday, the word accessible was used, but I thought that the more, I thought the more generic term was accessory dwelling units, right?
I agree with you.
Accessible makes me think, okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Staff members, have we departed too far afield from existing goals? I know we've been able to remove a few things and we've modified a little bit of language. Does it seem sensible as a reference point?
Mayor, I'm going to ask Malia and Todd to weigh in first.
Please, whoever wants to go.
I don't have any concerns with where we're at this point.
Thank you. Malia?
Same here.
Great. I just asked that because I don't want us to to have added things or made things too complicated. Councilmember O'Doherty.
Sorry, I said I wouldn't talk a lot, but I'm afraid that number 5 here is making it too, like, establish, like, that's a goal that you have to establish an authority. It's more like you want to, that's one of the methods I would think that you would consider, because you may find out that it wouldn't be helpful, you know. So to put it as that specific, what do you think about that, Janine? Is that tying us into something that we may find out that's not the mechanism?
I think that's a great question, Councillor O'Doherty. I feel like, at least with North 4th Street, where we've been kind of mulling this over for a number of years and done our research, that's going to be a tool there. But I think your point's well taken. The discussion I heard from the council was, you know, you guys are thinking about a variety of different potential districts that we could form to address blight. And this could work, but there could be other things. So if you wanted to broaden this to say, you know, look into urban renewal authorities and other tools I certainly wouldn't find that a problem.
Do other councilors agree?
I have a little bit of input. I actually like pinning that down as an exact goal, and I'll tell you why. It's because it's something the council has discussed and investigated going back a number of years and looked at the merits of. And I do think it's something that's going to need to come online, but I do think it could go under milestone 3. But in terms of naming it, I'm in favor of keeping it. But if the rest of you don't think that's a good idea, then I will say, okay, we'll put it as an investigative topic. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, Mayor, you know, I understand your thoughts on this, but the bottom line is we may need other tools. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and they may not work in every, you know, the URA may not work in every case. So we need to provide staff the option of all hands on deck, so to speak. You know, whatever we can make work, whatever is fiscally and you know, reasonable or whatever the right word is. So somewhere it needs to be in there. I mean, that's basically the message I'm hearing from our legislative delegation is, you know, we need to use all the tools. Whatever the tools are that the state has provided, we need to use them to the best of our ability. And that includes the 7 cent, which we haven't talked about tonight. But, you know, we need to use these tools, and however we do that, however we find them, whatever they're called, you know, we need to use them. If they're available to us as a municipality, we've got to.
Yeah, I'm in favor of a more comprehensive statement that includes other tools. Certainly. Yeah, that's fine with me. It's like everybody's okay with that. Yeah, I didn't intend for what I said to communicate that I wanted to be exclusive. I just wanted to make sure that it was in there. Everybody okay? All right. Well, I think that gets us to the goals and the individual milestones. And it seems like everybody's satisfied with this, and we're prepared to move it forward as an adoptable document.
So council, I will edit this up and send it to you all in the event you'd like to wordsmith it any further, and give you a chance to have your own copy of it so you can think about it before it comes forward to you in the form of a resolution. And that will likely be at your second meeting in January.
February, I think. So.
Or thank you. Yes, February.
Sorry, not being picky. Okay, and then of course during that resolution process with the council, you can make amendments or something if as you have time to look at this and something occurs to you or you want to make some language change. Really appreciate everybody's input and detail on this. I think we've done a good job with it. It's probably one of the more important things that we do on an annual basis. But it does seem like we've done okay. I appreciate the feedback from the staff that they feel like it's workable and fits. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is a pretty important meeting, that we have annually. And short of Councilors Gabriel and Schuster just re-listening to this meeting, I wonder if you and I, maybe give them a call, have a conversation. Once Janine fills up the, finishes her editing, we can spend some time with one or the other or both of them and just kind of loop them in to see if we need, to get their input. Because I feel kind of bad they're not here, and yet I feel they should be heard to some extent. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
I agree. I have a suggestion. I agree, and I have a suggestion. When this draft gets sent out to all the council members, then I will email those two council members and the vice mayor, and just ask them to please go through and review, and then reach out to us with any additions, changes, suggestions, or concerns. And then if need be, then we'll have a follow-up meeting with them, so they feel like they've had an opportunity to do what we've done here tonight. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Vice Mayor, is that good?
Yes, that's good with me. Thank you.
Good. I think that was worth talking about too. They did pass on that they might not be here tonight, and that's unfortunate. So we'll follow up with that as a way to make up for it. Okay. Let me see if we're okay now at this point in the meeting. Why don't we see if there's any comment on it? And of course, there'll be another opportunity for comment on it during the resolution process at the meeting too, which is coming at the second meeting in February. Okay. I think we're set. And I think at this point, unless there's anything else, we can conclude the work session. City Manager? Okay. Council members? City Clerk? We've done well with our job. It's 7:48 and we'll close the work session, and thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Call and follow up if something else occurs to you later. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Janine.
Night, everyone.
Night, everyone. Thanks.